honored and excited to be able to kick off today with all of you this mental health, wellness, and sustainability initiative that has started over the past couple of months and really picked up a lot of steam. But I need to warn everybody up front, all of you who are here in the room today, this isn't just another webinar. This isn't just another meeting or another project. This is a heartfelt, deeply personal mission that the folks that are here talking today with you have to support one another in this industry. I think back, Erwin, to our conversation at wherever the heck that was, where I shared with you and you shared with me about some of your struggles. And so those kinds of conversations, personal connections, are the types of things that we're going to be exploring here. And if it sounds a little strange, hang on, we're going to get to it in just a moment. In the room with me are Chris Min from Invigo, John Bailey from Precision, and Jessica DeCola of GPA. In case you don't know who they are, they're going to be on the air here in just a second and introduce themselves very quickly. But I'm curious, over in the chat, drop in the chat for me before we dive in. How many of you attended Dscoop Edge in Indy? How many of you were there? I assume everyone was there, but I don't want to make that assumption. Jess already corrected me on that. So yeah, Erwin was there. Peter, I don't remember you being there. James was there. Yeah, let me know in the chat. Tell me if you were there. And by the way, folks, the reason why I'm asking you to go into chat is I want you to be asking questions and giving us feedback in the session today. By the way, I hear some background noise. If you don't mind muting, folks, just to keep the quality high for everyone. But I want you leaning into the conversation. And the reason why I ask you about Dscoop and whether you were there in Indy is that you might remember John Bailey, who's here, on stage sharing the last day of the conference, something deeply personal. And that moment of vulnerability when he was on stage shook me. And so, John, tell us about that and what happened that morning.
So hello to everybody on the call, and thanks for joining, because this is, as Dave said, something that's really personal to us four. And if you know us, we like to have a laugh and have a joke about stuff, and hopefully, we'll make this lighthearted, but actually it has a really important message to get across, because we all feel very passionate about this. And fundamentally, I went on stage at Dscoop to step down from my role, which was we'll talk a bit more about that later, but was actually quite a significant moment for me in my career and in my work with Dscoop. And I didn't probably put as much emphasis on how big a deal it was for me until I actually walked up on stage. And so my speech changed to being really about stories and about how vulnerable and emotional and humble I felt about the situation. Those 9 minutes over and done with, and I got off stage, I was actually sat next to Dave. And as I sat down, Dave instantly turned and said, "You and I really need to talk about this situation, mental health, what you've said, how we can work together. We really should work together." And I said, well, I'd be delighted to. And then we enjoyed the rest of the show. Straight after the show, Jess grabbed me and said, "John, I really enjoyed that. It's lovely what you said, really resonated with me. We really should do something on mental health together and well-being." And I said, "Well, it's funny you should say that. Me and Dave have just agreed it. You obviously know Dave." So we got together. I then said, "I'd love to bring Chris Min into this, because I've worked with Chris and some other guys with Man Up, Man Down, and I know his work in this area is fantastic." And those guys said, "We're already working with Chris on this." So instantly, very quickly, we managed to get together as a group. So what we decided to do was to see if there was a value of this, rather than it just being, the whole Dscoop excitement, and was this going to be something that was going to have some power and some legs and make a difference to people. So we had a follow-up call. And in that follow-up call, we decided to be really open and honest and share our insecurities and see whether it was just a buzzword for us all and we thought we should do it, or whether actually deep down fundamental, is there a need for this in our community, in our industry, and as individuals? And so we shared some calls, and we didn't really know each other very well. We knew of each other. Yep. And we had a call, and we very quickly realized just how vulnerable we could be. And the call went really raw, really quickly, and how we talked about how the challenges we're currently facing. So I spoke specifically about how stepping down was really difficult and what it's like to be the old boy on the block. And I used to be the new kid on the block, and now I'm the old boy, and how actually that's impacted me personally and my family and my work, and how do I change? Jess, can you went really honest as well. What did you cover? Can you tell everyone what you covered in that call?
Yeah, thanks, John. And I mean, I'm going to echo what the same conversation. I mean, we were all in that room, and the transparency and the vulnerability. I mean, for me, that's what Dscoop is about. It's being open and authentic and leaning into this community as a safe space. And so, for me, it hit hard. And I don't know. I mean, most of you were there. So when Figo GPA and Mindfire shared kind of a booth space, and when we all got back to that booth space, Chris, John, and I were standing there with our tea and our coffee and just, I mean, almost speechless. Like that moment just happened. And it was so deep and real and raw. And for me, Dave and I have been friends for years. And so, and we're very transparent about our mental health journey, therapy weekly, yoga when I can get it in between, work and family. And for me, part of this was being able to weave into my personal life, into work life, so that there's just so people understand, that we're people, we're parents, we're wives, we're husbands, we're friends outside of work, and it's all intertwined. I mean, for me, it's aging and sick parents trying to balance a career and be a mom. Trying to get to Girl Scout meetings, but also make baseball practice at 5 o'clock and help with homework at night too. Um, Lots more there, fertility treatments, emotional roller coasters. I mean, the whole nine. And so for me, when we started talking about this, it made so much sense, to be able to piggyback on John's authenticity and transparency and vulnerability, so that we can have another community that supports us in a way that I think we all need. So,
Thanks, Jess.
yeah.
Chris, can you share quickly yours?
Yeah, sure. So, well, obviously, John, I've known you for a number of years now. You've always been a very real and sincere person. So your address was powerful and was no shock to me back in Indy. But can I just say, first of all, what a legacy you've left us, mate. So thank you very much for your service. In the build up to Indy, I was fortunate to work with Dave and Jess on some, marketing basically for attending the show. And one of the biggest things that was highlighted when we touched on human sustainability was actually there's a severe lack of support in our industry. So that's something that really resonated coming off of that webinar going into Indy, that actually that's something we need to look at. And the tipping point for this for me personally was being at the Dscoop event and hearing a lot of honest conversations of some very key individuals that run businesses who are going through tough times, sharing anxiety, stress, depression. And having been a business owner myself, I felt many of those feelings at many different times. And I just felt this sort of overwhelming need to put some kind of support network in place, because we need those business owners. We need them to be strong. We need them to feel supported by the community, because without those guys and girls, we don't have a community. So that was probably the main driver for me, John.
Thanks, Chris. Brilliant. And your work is really valuable, important. I think what you just said there is really key. And Dave, I'm going to come to you finally. You've been very public in sharing some of your challenges over the years. I understood it to a point, but I don't think I understood it anywhere near to the level I did after our call. And so I think if you could quickly share with the group your story, because I think it really does demonstrate the importance of what we're trying to do out of this community, please.
Absolutely. Folks, if you're able to go over to the chat, I want to know if you resonate with, what Chris shared, what John has shared, what Jess has shared. Any of those topics resonate with you, any of the themes that they expressed. And as I'm about to share mine, I want to know as well. And in doing so, and me sharing, I hope that me being vulnerable, us being vulnerable, is going to connect with you on a personal level. When I share these things in public and with you here in this group, I'm not doing it as a cry for sympathy, but really what we're trying to model is vulnerability in a way that our industry and the business world in general just usually doesn't understand or put value on. And so I'm hoping that by me sharing now, that it encourages you to do the same. So for me, my story at a very high level, depression and anxiety, started really in my early teens. And for me, things got significantly worse when my grandfather committed suicide, shot himself in the head. And that just triggered a number of things for me, for my mom at the time. Obviously, her dad passing in that way was significant. it caused such a rift in the family that I basically left home at 17 and was homeless, I'll call it, living in my car until I got a job and a roommate. So still in high school, pushing through all of that. And I was depressed. I was angry. I was lonely. And through my mid-20s, my early 20s, I tried to address those things with, a variety of different vices. We're going to talk about some of those today. On the outside, it may have looked like I had things together. I started my first company at 19. I sold that company. I had no idea up until that point that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I got addicted at that point. Started Mindfire in my early 20s. In fact, we were at the first Dscoop many, many, many years ago. But it was a very difficult childhood. I would consider myself still a child when I started Mindfire from multiple angles. Fast forwarded to 2012, my uncle, John, so my grandfather's son, also killed himself. And he did it at UCI, which is a university near us here, with outside of his office there. And it was just a very, very difficult time, not only because of the loss of John, my uncle, but also because of all the memories that it brought back. So since my teenage years, I've been wrestling with this stuff, and I shared it with John and Jess and Chris, and been through numerous therapists. And most recently, as I turned the chapter into my 40s, I started to realize that there's got to be a better way of handling this stuff. And so I've taken a multifaceted approach to that, both for my own health and the well-being of my company and my staff and my family. And about 18 months ago, something really shook me. If you look at the screen here, take a look at the screen. I've got 4 kids. Some of you know I got a bunch of kids. One of them, the second oldest, was having some issues. She was starting to act out in some ways that we thought, hey, maybe therapy will help her. And so the therapist asked her to just illustrate what home life was like. And if you look at the screen here, you'll see in this little sandbox here that here's my wife with a wedding dress on, drinking beer. I don't know what that's about, because that's not the case. But here we are in the living room. Here's the TV. But I want to draw your attention to me over here in the lower left-hand corner. This is me, as my daughter illustrated, lying in my favorite chair. And immediately the therapist noticed 2 things, and I'm sure you'll see it too. Number one, I'm surrounded by a wall of money. These are coins here. And I've got this big old rock on my chest. And so the therapist asked, why do you have dad in his chair here with a wall of money and this rock on his chest? And my daughter said, because first of all, he's always on his phone. And second, all he cares about is money. And so in that moment, I realized, man, these issues that I'm dealing with, we're here to talk about my daughter, right? But these issues that I'm dealing with in my work and in life are having a ramification on my family, on my kids. And so that was a catalyst for me, folks, to really start to look at doing this seriously. Being honest with myself and being honest with others was the first step. So that's a little bit about my journey. If you resonate with any of that, let me know there in the chat. John, did I answer your question?
Dave, you answered it perfect. And I think what you did is you demonstrated, I hope, to everyone on this call, just why, after we'd had that 2-hour call to see whether this was important, we had no choice but to make this a thing after hearing all the stories, right?
Yep.
And I hope everyone agrees. So the very foundation of what we're trying to do was laid out with those stories and those points. And the point is, this is very, very important for us and for everybody.
Yeah, and from the start, folks, what we have said is that what's driving us here, the reason why we pulled this initiative together, the reason why we've pulled all of you into this room today, the reason why we're doing this nights, weekends, and in our spare time, which, as all of you know, is very little, right? We're so busy these days. But the reason that we're doing this is the thought, the idea that there might be one person. If we can just help one person, maybe that's you. Maybe that's somebody in your family or somebody in your company. If we can just help one person, all of this is worth it. And so here's what we're planning to do with all of this. With that set up, the reason behind this movement is that through this experience of us sharing and being, inspired by John there at Dscoop, what we've done is we've identified a series of pillar themes. These are issues, if you will, that we all wrestle with, whether or not we're honest with each other about them. We're all, at the end of the day, we're all people, and we all have these issues. And what we want to do is we want to encourage honest, frank discussion on these topics. Some of them are going to make us uncomfortable. Some of them make me uncomfortable, but I think that's okay. And I think we need to talk about these things. And so our goal is to dig into these topics with you and with folks who are experts in each of these areas. So you're not just going to hear from me or from John, Chris, Jess, but we want to bring in subject matter experts in these fields to help us really understand how we can start to change some of these facets of our life. By the way, folks, as we talk about these, tell us in the chat. I'm going to have the team now tell you kind of some what these pillar themes are. In the chat, though, I want to know if the topic resonates with you. Please give us that feedback, because your feedback is going to help us identify the ones that are most important to this community. So, Jess, why don't you talk about the first one here?
That's me. I'm a working parent. And I mentioned it earlier. I mean, the balance between trying to build your career, and especially for me as a working mom, not downplaying working dads at all, but there's something different about the responsibilities of a working mom, trying to still be present and involved. Again, making those Girl Scout meetings, getting to the baseball game at 5:00, and helping with homework at night. And at the end of the day, at least I don't feel like I've given 100% to any part of my life, whether that be my marriage or my work or being a mom to my kids. And so, and topple onto that, trying to find time to get to a yoga class, which I found yoga years ago, and it is an incredible space for me mentally, emotionally, physically. But trying to balance all of that and feeling guilty, finding a space just for yourself. One of the things when we talk about working parents, for me personally, becoming a parent was a struggle. We went through years of fertility and IVF treatments and thousands of needles and doctor's appointments. And it was a very mentally, emotionally, and physically draining process. And one that almost broke our marriage, which, you know, for anybody who's been through it, it's not fun. But the one thing I did for myself in that moment was find a therapist and talk to them about how to manage my emotions, how to understand them, first of all, but then how to manage them so that I could be a better partner, a better friend, a better daughter, because we're also at that age where our parents are aging as well. And so we're trying to be parents, but we're also trying to be caretakers for our parents. And so it's this crazy balance. But being able to communicate that through therapy, through close friendships, and now this community I can't tell you how life-changing that has been for me, and being able to navigate just life in general. But
thank you, Jess. So that's the first pillar topic there, folks. Give us some feedback on that. John, tell us about this next one, the next generation here.
Okay, so this one is one that I absolutely love, and I really hope other people do and think this is of value, because I think it not only is an important topic for probably most of us anyway in our business, but also in life with the kids and everything. But at Dscoop, and I think Rosemary will vouch for this, at Dscoop, the student sessions are just the best sessions to be involved with, right? It's the one I commit to first every time. And me and Rosemary go in and we talk about our history and we talk about how we started our business, but we don't script it. We go rogue and we end up in all sorts of weird places. Sorry about that, don't we, Rosemary? But it's absolutely fantastic, and the engagement level is amazing. And what we got back was the essential importance of the change in mental health expectations and requirements of the next generation coming through. And I learned more from those sessions at Dscoop about that than I've learned in my own business. And I've realized just how critical it is for the business, but also for the young people coming through. So we need to learn how to deal with and support these people with the mental health that they need us to support. On top of that, the other thing I want to cover with this session is, what does it mean to me, the gray hair? You know, what does it mean? Am I threatened by it? How do I support them? How do I help? You know, does it have an impact on me and my job? Am I now past it and no use to anybody? So the next generation of leaders has a mental health impact for them, but also a mental health impact for the older generation of leaders, right? So we want to cover both off and discuss all topics. So that's that one.
Let us know if you resonate with that one, folks. Write something in the chat there about this idea of next generation of leadership and the passing of that torch. This one here that you see on the screen, entrepreneurship and leadership, this is one that's on my mind all the time. And so let me speak first to the business owners here. the crushing stress, if I could use that word, the pressure, the ups and the downs of those of us who are business owners, entrepreneurs. It's tough, right? Or if you're a leader in business, I'm sure you feel similar things, even if you don't necessarily own the company. The pressures of leadership, the mantle of leadership is tough. As a business owner, I know firsthand the unique stress that these shoes bring with them. And so I found myself not talking about these things with my friends because honestly, unless you've been in these shoes, you have zero idea what you're talking about. I'm just being honest. That's my experience. And the advice I get from folks really does more damage than any good, in my experience. So unless you've had to make payroll 26 times a year, 25 years in a row, you really don't know what this feels like. And so we think that having frank conversations about this is important. Who can identify with this? Let me know in the chat. Business owners, leaders, let me know in the chat if you can identify with what I just said. We want to know how that resonates with you. Jess, I'm going to tee you up here for the next one.
Self off mute. I mentioned earlier, the one thing I learned in this whole process of having a career, being a parent, balancing for aging and sick parents, is that if you're not centered and if you don't find time for yourself, everything else around you is so much more amplified and it's so much more difficult. I mentioned yoga, and I'm ashamed to say I don't go as often as I would like. But about 3 years ago, I went on a girls' weekend. We did a little girls' retreat, brought lots of bubbles, brought lots of food, shut our phones off, left our kids at home with our husbands. And we spent 3 days just kind of hanging out. And two of the women that I was with were certified yoga instructors. And one of them looked at me and said, "Jessica, have you ever done yoga?" And I'm like, probably 20 years ago. She said, "We're going to go up into the loft area." She goes, "We're going to do yoga." So there were 8 of us girls, went up, and she led a yoga session. And she looked at me and said, "You carry so much stress in your body. Like, I can see it. I can physically see the stress that you carry on your body." She goes, "You're coming to a class with me next week." And I said, "Dominique, I don't know. I'm good. I don't know that I have time for that." She goes, "Nope, you're coming." And so went to class with her, and it was the most life-changing experience to date that I've ever had. And not because of the physical part of it, but because it was a space where I spent an hour and I disconnected. And it was just this very spiritual out-of-body experience, as crazy as that sounds. But the peace and the space to clear my head, but also find that physical outlet, it shows how important that you are in this entire equation. And so when I can, again, shamefully, I don't go as often as I would like, finding that space for just yourself is wildly important. And we talk about health and wellness, and I'm going to plug sustainability here because we all work in the print industry and we all know it's not just a buzzword, right? Everybody is so focused on the environmental part of ESG. So, social and governance is also a part of it. The person, the people are the most important pillar of sustainability, period. And this is what gives it a platform. This is what gives it a voice. This is what, when we talk about social responsibility, this is part of it, guys. It's not just sitting here talking about all the things that we need to do to be better for ourselves. It's also part of, right, weaving it back to business. This is part of something that we just need to do as good humans and weave into our practices as business leaders and colleagues of the industry. So
Thank you, Jess. Absolutely powerful. Let us know in the chat there, folks, what you think about that. And I'm going to bring you back on, Chris, here. Talk to us about work-life balance and the importance of this topic.
Yeah, well, obviously it's a key one for our pillars of what we're trying to offer here. First of all, I'm very lucky, very fortunate to be working for a company that has actually invested some time and research into the importance of work-life balance. There were four main areas that came out of that research, and it was overworking and long hours, lack of flexibility, inadequate boundaries or boundaries between your work and your personal life. We've all had those calls or those messages gone 10 o'clock at night. And then there's the work culture and expectation. And as business leaders, we can obviously help with 1, 2, and 3 by creating a great culture and expectations. But let's just look at the first one alone, and that's overworking and long hours. you're looking at some pretty negative effects on your personal health, your mental health, your personal life, and generally the quality of life of your family and friends, or even hobbies. So if you can get that one element of work-life balance in order, then you could be laughing. Some solutions as well would be time management, employee policies, and technology use. So, we're going to look at those four sections just to go over them again. It's overworking and long hours, lack of flexibility, inadequate boundaries between work and personal life, and work culture and expectations.
Thank you, Chris. If those resonate with you folks, let us know. This one next that I have here on the screen is one that's hard to talk about, especially with friends or partners or maybe clients in the room, where maybe if you're like me and if you're honest, you want to pretend that you have it all together, right? But you know what? This is real life. And I've had addictions in my life that have completely controlled me. If you're brave enough, let me know if that's also true for you in the chat. John, talk to us about this and how you view addiction.
So it's an interesting one, this, and to be really honest with everybody on the call, when we were talking about doing this presentation, Chris had suggested that maybe he should do this slide, right? And he said that because Chris really understands the damage of addiction and the importance of breaking the habit of, the drinking to forget on an evening, and the people who don't think they have maybe a challenge, but deep down, really, if we're honest with ourselves, we do. And I put my hand up and said, actually, Chris, I'd like to do this slide, and I'd like to do this slide because you've got your shit under control most of the time in this space, and certain other people closer to home, i.e. me, probably don't, if we're really honest. And so what I want to say on this piece is, this is so important that we need to cover it off, because I definitely drink more days than I should to relax, right, and use it as a reason to do that. And what I've realized in the short time we've been working on this group is that actually it is something I need to address. I'm not sure I'm ready to address it, but actually it's something I need to address, and I'm going to address it when I'm ready. But I felt so sort of serious about this after our conversations that I wanted to do this slide. And I think you're right, Dave. I think this is a sensitive one. It's a difficult one. It's not easy to discuss, but I think it's something that's really, really important that we do. And it's not about preaching, but it's just about highlighting that, this is something we should probably cover off.
My friend Erwin here in the chat says it's definitely true on addiction. It doesn't have to just be substance abuse. Agree with you, Erwin. There's other things that we become addicted to, and we don't necessarily recognize it. Absolutely true. This next one here around therapy and counseling, as I mentioned earlier, and you've heard it from Jess, I've been in therapy since I was a teenager. And when I tell some of my clients about this, heck, even some of my friends, and I'm thinking of a very specific number in my mind right now, I can see them rolling their eyes because they've done that. And these are people that I consider to be very close to me, to be close friends. I'll tell you, it doesn't hurt my feelings because I think it's a really real reaction to the idea of therapy, of having maybe somebody do crazy voodoo on you, some sort of crazy head manipulation or something. Sometimes I wish it was something magical, but it's actually really, really tough work. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about this, Jess, because this is something that we talked about over dinner. I don't remember when that was, maybe a year or two ago, but tell us about your experience with this.
Yeah, no, I mean, same with you, John, or gosh, David. I've been in therapy for quite some time, and for lots of different reasons and for different moments and events in my life, right? But you and I, when we got on this call with John and Chris after Dscoop, and we were talking, you and I are like, yeah, therapy once a week. I love my therapist. This is my third one. And it was a very casual conversation about our therapists and how much we love them. And they, I missed a week. And so, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And John started laughing, and he's like, therapy. No, for those who know John, yes, we like to be, therapy was a laughable thing for him. And so we said, well, then what do you do? What do you do for an outlet? He goes, I just go ride things through Sri Lanka, and I go on like crazy, climb mountains, and that's my therapy. And we're like, well, it's great to have a physical outlet, but like, do you talk to anybody? And as we continue to have this conversation, he's like, well, I've got this buddy who lives in, I can't remember where, John, you'll have to remind me. He goes,
Canada.
we talk like once a month, and, you know, we talk about what I'm doing in my life and what he's got going on, but mostly we talk about the challenges that I'm going through. And Dave and I stopped and said, hey, John, you go to therapy. That's therapy.
That's not therapy. It's guidance. It's not therapy.
It's guidance, right? And so it was just an aha moment for him. And it was probably one of the most incredible moments throughout this entire process with these guys, because that was it. Like, that was what we wanted to do, was have him recognize that, no, I actually do this, and it actually does work. So, John,
you want to add anything to that, John?
I don't think there's anything to add. Thank you.
All right. This next one is about transitioning and letting go. And Chris, why don't you explain to everyone what we mean by that?
Yeah, so I think as an observer, really, Dave, I've watched yourself and John build up businesses successfully from afar over the years. And I've also seen your teams below you develop, and you guys invest a hell of a lot into your teams. And I now see that you're both probably at a point where you're ready to sort of either step aside, hand over to the next generation below to take over. I guess what I wanted to ask, starting with you, Dave, is how do you feel about that?
Yeah, you know, it's difficult as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. You know, one of the things that I talk to my therapist about, and I want to know if anybody resonates with that here, is that your sense of identity is so conflated with your business, or at least that's true for me, right? So if the business is doing well, I feel good. If the business is not doing well, I feel like crap, right? And so there's so much of that unhealthy kind of conflation of our own personal identity and that of our business, which I am still working on. So for me, it's a journey of transitioning leadership to others in the company, of being able to trust others, and being able to be confident in who I am as a leader as I delegate and continue to grow in that capacity. So it's an ongoing journey for me, certainly one that I'm very keen to learn from others from in terms of how they're doing it. And John's been a big help there. So John, I'll turn over to you. How do you think about this?
Yeah, I agree with you. You know I do. Interestingly, while we were waiting for people to join this call, me and Dave were on first, and we were discussing his obsession with sending his AI robot into meetings he didn't have time to be in, so that he could hear what they were talking about. So we know Dave, Dave's got a problem in this space. But anyway, we work with Dave.
Let go.
It's really hard to transition, let go. And like you said, Dave, your business, and everyone on this call will agree. Well, I know most will agree with me. Your business becomes part of you, and it becomes what makes your ego, and you become the business, and the business is you. And then suddenly, if the business is going to fail, is that your life over? Is that you over? Is that you as a person? So a failure because the business isn't right, and then in the business is good, then you have to look after everybody else, and it's such a challenge. It's back to that leadership piece. Well, but transitioning and letting go, what I've realized actually is transformational when you understand that it's something that you should do and you can do, and actually if you can turn it into a positive. So that's where I'm at with it. Is I've come to terms with it now as a grey hair, that actually I'm to start bringing the other people up and on and what they want to do. And I feel like now I've got a longer part of the journey left, but that's about bringing everybody else through and making them represent the business. And the business is not me. I've come to terms the business isn't me, and I'm not the business. I'm me, and the business is the business, right? So that's taken a lot of work to get to. So this is a big topic, I think, and I think it will really resonate with our audience on this one.
Okay, John, and just going back onto the indie thread real quick. How are you staying relevant?
Oh well, I'm not really very relevant anymore. But I tell you how I'm staying relevant. I'm jumping into things like this and putting my energy into stuff that I think is more relevant and even more powerful. I'm still involved with Dscoop, as Pete knows. I'm still on every call as well, so I'm keeping relevant there. But from a work perspective, if I could turn my camera around and show you my wall, I was talking to Dave about this earlier. I ripped down every picture in my wall that side yesterday and put a whole new strategy up for the next 3 years to make sure I stay relevant. So, but that strategy is focusing on bringing my team through to be relevant rather than it being all about me. So
Great answer.
Yep.
Great answer. Love that. Love that.
All right, Jess, I want to bring you back on here. Why are we doing all of this? Kind of bring us to land in on a spot where you can share with everyone what we hope that this turns into for everyone.
Yeah, thanks. I think that we're seeing it in the chat, right? I mean, the realization that this is not just a me thing; it's an everyone thing. There were also some comments in the chat about, and I think maybe Pete or I have to scroll up to see who commented on it, about how their 19-year-old son was way more open about talking about their mental and emotional health than. And we have a hashtag 50-year-old dudes. Let's be honest, like that's our industry, right? And so it's going to take a moment to open up and peel back those layers, but to break those stigmas and those myths around what this actually is. But more than that, provide that safe space, or when you put, that safe space is a critical piece to all of this. And if we can be up here and be open and transparent and vulnerable and share the things that we've shared, and everybody can resonate with some part of it, in addition to us providing resources like you mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but just creating a community to have somewhere to go when you're having a shitty day. And, we're going to leverage this platform to help us do that, and each other. So we talked about the one, if we can reach one person throughout this entire thing, then all of the work and the after hours effort that we've put into this, nights and weekends, and 4 a.m. texts from me, it will be worth it. It'll be worth it.
Absolutely. And as I said before, folks, this is about us being vulnerable as a community. If you haven't done it before, if it's not something that comes easily to you, I understand that it's uncomfortable. For many years, I never talked about any of this stuff. It was too hard. It was too painful. It was too raw, like a wound that was still open. And maybe the worst part of it for me as a younger person was that I didn't think anybody really cared. Why would anyone want to listen to me cry about the things that were on my mind? It also felt like there was no possibility that anyone else had ever gone through what I felt I was going through, right? Of course, I know those things aren't true now. But even when I started to become comfortable with sharing, I couldn't imagine how this part of me would somehow weave itself into or be an important part of my daily work. I didn't think that business and these kinds of topics could come together in some meaningful way. Why would people in the print industry, direct mail, print, signage, all of the stuff that we work on, why would we want to talk about this? But obviously, I'm wrong. And so this is the mission we're on, friends. And we want you to join us, everyone that's here. Not only do we want this community to participate, but as I said earlier, we're going after thought leaders, experts, speakers, folks that are educated in the fields related to the topics that the team just went through. And these aren't just ordinary people like me. These are folks who can bring their professional views to these important topics and help us as a community learn together. We have a name for this movement that I want to share with you here. But John, why don't you tee that up for us? The name that we've come up with for this movement and why it's important.
Okay, so we wanted to come up with a name that was a bit different, right? Because we don't want to just be another well-being, fluffy group, right? This is about being honest, vulnerable, serious, supporting, vulnerable, fun, and edgy, and actually covering the topics that people don't want to hear. So you mentioned earlier about the hashtag, 50-year-old white dudes. Well, we have problems too, right? So it's important to cover this off, and we want to be creating a debate. We don't want to just be a place where we all agree with stuff. We want to have a debate and actually discuss stuff and get to the crux of what we're trying to talk about. So we wanted something that's a bit different. It's got a bit of an edge to it. And we need that name because we want to be able to push it and to promote it outside of just Dscoop, but our whole industry. So we were trying to figure out what the name was, and we kept finding ourselves in these little rabbit holes. And then we remembered a campaign that I did at Precision Broker years ago, which caused a little bit of controversy. It divided the room, and people either loved it or hated it. It was a campaign called Know Your Sheet. And it created a little bit of noise. And actually what we realized is that's the sort of same noise we wanted to create. So seeing as this is an official launch party, you will be the first to hear it. So drum roll, please. Dave, you can please. This will now be called officially Sheet for Brains. this is our new name and our new movement for what we're trying to do. So this is what we will see. Why are we putting this out there? Why do we need a name? Because we want to be able to push this onto social media. We want to get cut through. We want to get people interested, and we want people to see exactly what we're all about, right? So we're having a bit of fun with it, but it's for the print industry. It's for more than just mental health. It's about challenging our brains to think about it differently. So this is why we're going to do it. We want to be seen and heard. So I hope you like it.
And John, how are we intending to leverage this outside of Dscoop?
Yep, so we're going to be doing the social media that you can see here outside, which we're all going to do, and we're going to be providing that to other members. So you guys being on this call is so important because we want everybody to move with it. This is not about us four. The more input from everybody else, the more we're going to share it, the more we'll post it socially, the more we'll get it out. We're going to get a movement going where Sheep for Brains actually means stuff to people outside of just the Dscoop community. So we're going to be posting content and various pillars. We're going to be having the quarterly webinars that we'll talk about in a little while, a minute. We're going to have the press engagement and press releases, and we want you guys to all have a say in it. This is not just about us. So hands up. I said at the end of the Dscoop, hands up, lean in, have a say, and that's why it needs branding.
So the first expert that we've lined up is Glenn Packiam. You can see him here on the screen. And let me tell you why in our next webinar we're going to bring him on. I'm not sure if any of you can resonate with this, but tell me in the chat, over the last few years, I want to say like going back to the pandemic period and coming out of it, it just seems like life and work is really, 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 really hard. And I find myself tired in a way that I think goes beyond the physical. It's like my spirit is tired, my psyche is tired. I feel this weight that a good night's sleep doesn't shake. And honestly, it leaves me with little gas or oomph to take on the challenges that come my way, our way every day. So the question is, how do we build a resilience into ourselves, into our organizations, into our families in order to cope with the crap coming at us that never seems to end? How do we create ways of working and living that help us move towards a positive mindset? Does anybody resonate with this idea? Let me know there in the chat. That's why we're going to explore this with Glenn. He's a expert on this topic, phenomenal speaker, an engaging guy, and we're going to announce the date and the time of that very soon. We want you to be there. We're going to open this up to not only the Dscoop community, but the industry on the whole, and have a conversation with Glenn around how we can start to build resilience into ourselves, into our work, and in our families. Jess, with that, give folks a little preview of what's coming up next here.
So we've been working very closely with Peter, who's on the call today, and the Dscoop leadership team. And so, guys, when we're all together in Long Beach next year at Dscoop, we are going to have an early speaker session. We're going to have a morning show time slot in Long Beach. The four of us, in collaboration with Dscoop, are going to have a kind of a wellness oasis. So all of the webinars and events that we're going to have leading up to Long Beach, we're going to kind of bring into a physical space when we're there together. And again, leveraging this platform, having webinars, podcasts. Our friend Chris here has like 17,000 podcasts a week. And so we're going to kind of leverage this technology. And so does Dave. So all of those things, guys, forthcoming from now until till Long Beach. So keep an eye out on all of the social media platforms, but especially this community page where we're really hoping to kind of push out and build a content and community and really raise this up.
Thank you, Jess. So, folks, again, I hope you hear this coming through loud and clear from John, from me, from Jess, Chris. This isn't just our initiative. This is yours. We're all in this together, hopefully supporting one another, hopefully learning from each other. I think there's so much untapped potential in this room if we all just lean in, as John was saying. So what is your first step going to be? How are you going to contribute to our industry, to this group that's here, to create a more mentally healthy place? That's the question I have for you. I want everybody here to commit right now to doing their little part in this. If you're in, type all in the chat. I want to know if you're all in. I'm not going to ask you to share. I'm not going to ask you to be vulnerable on the air, but I want to know if you will lean in with us. Are you all in on that? All right, good. I see Devin saying sure. Erwin says all in. Craig's all in. Devin's all in. Bob's are in. all in. Happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. All right. So what we want to do now, folks, is have a conversation with you. We want to answer questions. We want to know what you're thinking. We want your input on the pillars and the way that this is rolling out. So now is your time to be selfish. Ask the question or give us the feedback that you want us to talk about here. I'm going to read a few things. Jules is saying, I feel it, Dave, mounting pressures and responsibilities both at home and with our roles as leaders for the organizations we serve. And I think, Jules, you're talking about this issue of needing to be resilient in the face of whatever that is. Courtney says, thank you for putting this together. Love it. I'm in. Courtney, give us in the chat, what is it that resonates with you about what we're doing here? I want to know from you specifically, Courtney. Michael says, not sure how much I could help, but happy to try. Michael, that's the spirit. You got to lean in with open hands and just let's see what happens here. All right. Good. I want to hear from all of you here in the chat. But first, John, I'm going to go over you, and I know you've been able to read the chat as it's going through. Just summarize for me, kind of what are you seeing people saying, and kind of what themes are resonating with folks.
So, can you stop sharing the slide as well so I can see some people? Thank you.
Yep.
I think what I'm hearing is, and what I'm seeing is, different people are responding to different things, which shows me that the pillars are, having multiple pillars is the right thing to do, because people seem to be jumping on different pillars. I think they're all linked, and I think that's what I'm reading is as we're going through the pillars, people are making comments and then seeing that they're all linked. I think there's probably a couple of other pillars that we can add from what I can see. So that's something I would say to this group is please, if we've missed a real key one, because we're not hung up on the ones we shared, they're just the ones we've come to first. If we've missed a key one, get it in there. There's no stupid idea. So please send that in to us because we can jump on it. For what I'm seeing is there's a core of people on this group who've turned up today who get it, who want that safe space, but also get the importance of what we're trying to do here. And so I think we've got the core and the nucleus of something really, really special with the people on this group. I think what we now have to do is work out how we can help with the experts and with the topics, really give these guys the information and the knowledge they need to be able to help them amplify it through their organizations and through their families and through this group, is what I would summarize.
I want to ask everybody in the audience if there's one pillar theme that we've talked about today that's at the top of the list for you, what is that? Drop it in the chat. Erwin says, I think that we underestimate the incredible amount of help that can be acquired by simply hearing from others' stories and successes in managing mental health issues. Erwin, you're absolutely right. Jack,
just to jump in, Erwin, I think that's the power of what we established when we saw it in Indy, and that's what we want to make sure we amplify, which is why, having you and the people on this call, we want you to be sharing your stories on these webinars when they're relevant to the expert and to those groups, because the experts will help us position, maybe give us techniques and tools, but it's when I hear from you a challenge that you've had that resonates with me as a similar type of person, as a business owner, that's when I get the real strength and the real vulnerability comes out of me, because I know I'm able to share it as well. So you're absolutely right, Owen. I completely agree.
John, I'm going to throw this back at you. I see Jack's comment here. Not sure if it was mentioned, but conflicts at work cause stress. Let's talk about that. So, John, monkeys, food for monkeys. I want you to share that with everyone, and I want you to illustrate how I said, hey, why don't we talk about this at Dscoop? This is stuff that other people need to learn and understand. I'm sure have questions. Jack's, I think, is in line with that. So, talk about the monkeys.
Okay, so we were on a call. Me and Dave talked quite a lot, and when the call's finished, Dave goes, "Oh, actually, can you ask me about this and answer me about that?" And we talk. The four of us talk about various business stuff. The monkey piece came about because Dave was really frustrated. Dave came on a call, and we were to talk about this, and he was I'm going to be real, Dave. He was visibly not himself. He was down. He was distracted. He was not present. So I questioned why he wasn't present on the call and what was going on. And let's stop this other call. Let's stop talking about the launch party for now. Let's talk about you, Dave, because something's going on. So Dave then became locked into the conversation and said, actually, I'm really struggling with the fact that, everyone just drops problems on me all the time. I just get problem after problem after problem after problem. My brain is fried. I get loads of crap. I can't, and I just don't know how to handle it. So I told him a story about how I handle it at Precision, and that is a story about the monkeys. So basically what happens is when people come to me, I tell them you're not able to, every time you come to me with a problem, it's like you walk in with a monkey on your back and you throw the monkey into my office and then you fuck off home. Excuse my French. I'm sat here till midnight dealing with your problems before I can get onto my own job, right? So we decided to have a sign on my door that says you can bring a monkey, but only if you bring food with it. So people come to my door and they say, I want to talk to you about this problem. I say, it's not a monkey, is it? And they go, yeah, it's a monkey, but I've got a solution. So I say, tell me the food then. So if they can tell me the food, then I go, good idea. You've solved it. Sort it out. And away they go. But they come to me with a monkey without food. And what it does is it pushes the problem back on them. It is what it is. But what we got from the conversation, Dave took that away and implemented it in the business, right, Dave? And it started to already learn. And we realized that between us and in this group, we've got so many techniques like that we're all using that can help relieve different stresses that we're all dealing with in our jobs that actually we don't really share unless we're in this conversation where we're talking. And we felt that was a real topic that we may bring to the session at Dscoop in Long Beach. That might be the topic of our session. So relieving the stress and relieving the tension at work and relieving all those challenges we face with the teams by bringing all of our combined skill sets together to give these examples of how to improve those situations. Is that a fair summary, Dave?
Yeah, that's fair. And Jack Glacken, what's interesting about what you say there is that I look at you as almost like the father of the industry here, right? And yet here you are being vulnerable, saying, hey, I still have these issues with conflicts at work and the stress that it causes me. And that's inspiring to me just to hear that from you. And then to think about having an opportunity in a room at Dscoop to be able to say, okay, so, John, how do you handle that? Or Chris, how is that something that you've experienced and what do you do? And just learning from one another. Bob Rouse, I'm sure there's no conflicts at HP ever, right? But if there were, how would you handle it, right? Thank you, guys. I see all the comments coming in here. Thank you. Peter, can you confirm that the chat is going to be saved? We can come back and look at this later, learn from the comments?
Yes, I actually wrote it earlier, but there's so many comments. So everyone that's here live in the messages section, you can always refer back to the live chat. And you can connect with anyone that's here. The dialogue can continue, and you can reference this always. It's going to stay here as long as you want.
In the few minutes,
but only for those that are alive, actually. So
in the few minutes we have left, folks, is there anybody brave enough who would like to unmute and speak? Give us your thoughts. Brian, it looks like you're moving. You ready? No? Okay. All right. Got it.
I'll tell you what.
Anybody?
I tell you what I have realised is this is the only way to keep Brian quiet. So I'm going to do all my calls with Brian. Fantastic.
Erwin, would you be brave enough? Remember, I called you out at Dscoop and you had to go on stage with the mentalist. I'm doing it again, my man. Would you be brave enough to share a little bit about your story?
Jack just came on too.
Yeah, Jack came on too. Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting journey. Similar to Dave, probably started in my teens. Challenges really took a deep turn when my father passed away. I was 24 years old and all of a sudden taxed with a young family, having to care for, as I think Jessica said early on, aging parents. Father passes away, career on the go, outside activities and responsibilities in various charitable organizations. And man, oh man, it took a deep turn. I think one of the things that, is probably going to be covered in all of the topics is, have you ever reached a point where you're virtually ready to commit suicide? Yep. And when you get to that point, boy, oh boy. And similar to Dave, who's going to listen to me? Nobody's around, feel all alone. I can be in a room of 1,000 people and I can know many of them, like the Dscoop community when we're there, and yet still feel completely alone, isolated, no support, nobody cares, all of that. So yep. It's been a wild journey. There are points during this thing, and you talk about being vulnerable. There's points during this webinar meeting that, I'm starting to tear up already a little bit, because the impact is going to be incredible when this all comes together. So I would just urge everyone, don't be afraid to share, right? That's how, ultimately we all get through this. And I mean, I see faces on this that, we got to know each other through an industry and through work, but man, we've become, friends and that just love to be together. So there isn't any way that we shouldn't be able to share all of this in a positive way that has an impact on not just us, but, the greater group, the greater team.
Love that. Love that, Owen.
My eyes are sweating, guys. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Jack,
we're waterproof here today.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of funny when I was listening to everybody talking, John and Chris and Jess, and I'm there, yep, all the above. I mean, I was at a point where between work, and I mentioned conflicts at work, and I coached high school basketball for years, and I was on a board, and it's a lot of stress, and you're constantly running around moving, and then when you get a chance to, quote, medicate yourself, or, like John said earlier, have a few drinks just to, you can get into some bad habits. And so to say that, in this fast-paced business we have that's ever-changing, to say that we're all just handling this, like, beautifully would be crazy. So I think this is a great idea, you guys. I really do. And it's a great forum for us to all help each other.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
John Tolley has a question as well.
Okay, yeah, John, go ahead. Are you unmuting, John? While we're doing that, it reminds me, folks, of when we see each other at these events in the elevator, bump into Jack, or wherever it happens to be, and inevitably it's, hey, how are you doing? How's the business? And 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 out of 100, it's, oh, things are great. Everything's good, man. And that is so far from the truth, if I'm honest. And I don't think we give ourselves the permission to be honest in those conversations. Or maybe I'll personalize it to me. Maybe that's just me. But I think we need to have those conversations. John, are you able to present or speak?
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Hey. Yep. I'd say, Pete, you know the story that I wrote for my own journey, just as kind of lockdown hit, and the things that I experienced and went through, and what Dscoop did for me. And, just that opening up and talking, if you can dig that out and release that as part of those sessions, it just may encourage other people just to do the same, because you're absolutely right, Dave. When you're the leader of the organization, sometimes you fear failure, and you fear the outcome of that, and not only just for the business, but for the team around you, and what chaos that can cause when you say we're not in a good place. And being vulnerable with your team, being vulnerable essentially with the Dscoop community, because that's a group of people just like you, and it's a safe space to talk. And as I said in the chat, and there's no truer thing to say, it's lonely at the top, right?
Yep. Well, the meeting system here has notified me that we're at the end of our time here, and I want to be respectful of everyone who is here. So briefly to John, Jess, and Chris, I want to give you an opportunity to say some final closing words and thank everyone. And then we will bring the meeting to an end here and keep you posted as to the next step. So Jess, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, thank you. I just a heartfelt thank you to everyone here today. I know I reached out to a few of you personally in advance of this to invite you here today. It's become such a passion project for the 4 of us, but one we also obviously recognize resonates with everyone here on some sort of level. And so we're really looking forward to continuing this conversation and having you guys join us and to learn from you. And learn from the things that we're able to put together and curate for this. So just thank you.
Chris, I'm going to go to you. And then Peter, I'd also love to hear your words as well before we close with John. But first over to you, Chris.
Yeah, so I echo Jess's comments. Thank you to Dscoop as well for supporting this, but ultimately we want to support the Dscoop community as well. This is all about the run up to Long Beach, and of course there'll be many sessions on the way, and of course what we put on when we get to Long Beach. But it doesn't have to end there. And obviously, the more you contribute and the more you reach out and let us know what you need, the more we can, the further we can take this. So hopefully we can take this long into the future.
Awesome. Peter.
A couple of things. I can definitely vouch for John Tolley and John Bailey being my part-time therapists on my Dscoop journey for sure. We've shared some tears, beers, and some other things, I think, as well. When you guys came to us with this idea, and I think it's really powerful. We've talked within the Dscoop leadership about vulnerability for quite a while, and it's hard. Not hard to bring it to the stage, but it's I think the community itself is taking the reins and saying, we want to talk about this. So then it's on us to follow through and open up the platform and anything that we can do to have those conversations. Because again, as you guys have written in the mission, right? If there's one that we can help, then that's great. So
absolutely,
but, we've got a bit of a movement going. So I'm very excited about this concept. I really learned a lot even in this session. So I'm super excited and grateful for everyone, speaking up and talking about these things these are the harder things to talk about. But there's a lot that we can learn from each other, and then I appreciate the finding of experts that can even help us further and open up more of these conversations. So the more we have them, I think the better for all of us.
John, before I come to you, I want to know, and Peter told me in the chat that it won't cut us off. Is there anybody else who wants to share something? Unmute yourself. Let me know in the chat if there's something on your mind that you want to share or ask. Let me know in the chat before we end. Peter, I'm just thinking tears, fears, and beers. Maybe that's the name of a session.
And something else.
There we go.
I'm not sharing at that session.
Tears, fears, beers, and bubbles, though. We need to add bubbles to that mix.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right, John.
No, but just a quick anecdote is sometimes it just takes looking at each other and right? So I think someone wrote, I think Dave, you wrote it to Marianne, when you know.
Yeah.
So we've had some of these that there's nothing that needs to be said. You just look at each other and there you go. So
all right, John, coming over to you, man. You were the spark that started this on stage with your 3 stories, and I want to give you the opportunity to bring us to a close today.
Okay, thank you. So we, what Pete's just said there is really interesting. We had calls during COVID, right? And during COVID is when I created this wall behind me, because I created it of all the things when I thought, why am I doing this? I don't understand why I get up and do this every day. And I created this wall of pictures because I know exactly why I do this every day, to create memories with people like this and with people like you. And that's what this wall represents. So every time I'm having a shit day, which is most days, by the way, I look at that wall and realize that things actually are, have opened up a lot for me. And during COVID, we would come on and we'd have global board calls. And if you know, nothing needed to be said. It was half an hour of sat looking at people's faces on the screen with a couple of people talking, right? We were all in it together. So it definitely, at that point there, it has value. I think what I want to add is this, right? This is the sort of thing you say, Pete, about, the community's wanted to do this for a while, but actually getting that ignition, getting that kickstart, getting that energy into initiative like this. And it's a phrase I use a lot, and John and Mike will tell you, it's easy to do, easy not to do, right? This is the sort of thing it's easy to talk about and say we need, but it's very easy not to do anything about it. And kudos to you, Dave, you, Jessica, and you, Chris, because you people get shit done, right? And you're making sure I get shit done too. So kudos to you 3 for the rest of this group. Need to understand that you 3 have jumped on this and driven it. And it could have been so easy to talk about and not do anything about it, but look at it now. We're here. We've got content. We've got sessions. We've got volume. We've got value. We've got people on this call. And the people we've got on this call, you couldn't afford this board if you tried, right? You could not afford the people on this board if we tried. This is like an elite board of people that have all said we're leaning in and we're going to help. So we've got a breadth of experience on this call that money can't buy, that have all said we're in. And that's the most exciting thing from today. And that's why it was so important to do a launch party and so important to see you who joined. And the people that have joined, honestly, you've made it just unbelievable for us to know that it's the right thing to do. You have our commitment that we're going to get shit done, and it's easy to do, easy not to do, but we're going to deliver it, and we're going to keep delivering it because you need it, and you're all welcome to join and help us move it because we need you to help us. And that's so I'm the future is very good for this community, I think, for Dscoop anyway, but for this community within Dscoop, I think I'm feeling really, really buzzed about it from today. So thank you very much for being involved and joining.
John, Chris, Jess, do you mind drop your emails there in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out to us after? I just gave you my email there, folks. Anything on your mind, on your heart, drop us a note. And with that, thank you all for being here. Your time is the most valuable asset that you have, and the fact that you would share that with us is greatly appreciated. So thank you, everyone. We're excited to be in this journey with you and for you, and we'll keep you posted as to the next event with Glenn Packiam on resilience. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
All done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.